Thank you for joining us for Lesson 1, the Art Supply Scavenger Hunt, in our Safe at Home Visual Journal series. For my ARB art students, please post any questions that you may have at any time in the comments section on Google Classroom for the assignment. For everyone else, you can feel free to post questions and take this course along with us on YouTube. I'll be available live for discussion and to answer questions during art class on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and during my office hours from Monday through Thursday from 3 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Nina Simone tells us that it's an artist's duty to reflect the times in which we live, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing as artists. In their visual journals, students will shape an artistic investigation of their experience of life during the stay-at-home order. The standard that we're focusing on this unit asks us to shape an artistic investigation of an aspect of present-day life using a contemporary practice of art or design. The essential question that we're investigating for week 1 is how can you safely make art in the time of coronavirus? The activity that we're going to participate in today is called the Art Supply Scavenger Hunt. While we're at school, we're very fortunate to have all the art supplies we can ever need to make art. While at home during the current health crisis, our access to art supplies may be severely limited. In this lesson, you will hunt for art supplies around your home that you can safely use to make art while at home. Here's our lesson objective. What? Explain how traditional and non-traditional materials may impact human health and the environment and demonstrate safe handling of materials, tools, and equipment. How? Students will participate in an art supply scavenger hunt, assess the safety and appropriateness of traditional and non-traditional art materials found around their home, and sketch their found art supplies in their visual journal. Why? The stay-at-home order in California prevents us from meeting as a class and severely limits our access to art supplies. This activity will help students make healthy choices when selecting both traditional and non-traditional art materials. This lesson meets California Visual Arts Core Standard Creating 2.2 by explaining how traditional and non-traditional materials may impact human health and the environment and demonstrate safe handling of materials, tools, and equipment. When we begin hunting, there's a few questions we need to think about. First of all, what can you make art on? What can you make art with? Is it safe to use? And do I have permission? Our first task is to find things that we can make art on. Things like sketchbooks, drawing paper, construction paper, and watercolor paper are traditional materials that you might find around the house if someone you know has taken an art class in the past. Otherwise, search for non-traditional materials, things like cereal boxes, junk mail, newspapers, wrapping paper, or brown paper bags. Things like cereal boxes can be taken apart and you can draw on the inside. Really, any of these materials are good for making art. The second thing we're going to focus on in our hunt is what can we make art with? Traditional materials might include things like pencils, pens, crayons, color pencils, and watercolor paint. Non-traditional materials might include things like makeup, coffee, herbs and spices mixed with water, or natural ingredients and things that you can find around your house. The next part of our hunt is super important. We need to ask ourselves, is it safe to use? We do not want to use any materials that are unsafe. Even traditional art materials used in the wrong environment can create harm to yourself or others. Please use caution, and if you have any questions, please ask an adult. Lastly, before you use any of the art supplies that you find, ask yourself, do I have permission? Be sure to have the permission of an adult at home before you use any traditional or non-traditional art supply. Please have a conversation with the adults that you live with about what is acceptable. Now it's time for some fun. Let's go hunt for some art supplies. Now let's get ready to sketch. Lay out the supplies you found. Create a full page sketch of the supplies you found using those materials. I'm starting my sketch in pencil with the traditional materials first. I found some different types of pencils and pens, including regular number 2 pencils, some mechanical pencils, a Sharpie marker, some crayons for my son's art kit, along with some Crayola markers, a water brush, a few extra paintbrushes, some watercolor pencils, and a watercolor set from Crayola. After my loose pencil sketch is complete, I'm going to go back and outline this with a waterproof pen so that I can go back later and paint this in with watercolor paint. You'll notice I'm keeping a scrap of paper underneath my hand while I'm drawing so that I don't smudge the pencil lead. Now that I've drawn in the traditional materials, I'm going to start working on the non-traditional side. I started off by gluing down some scrap papers that I found from the junk mail and also from a shopping bag. And I'm going to start by outlining the rest of the materials in here with pens, starting with the spice rack materials. I found some turmeric, some cilantro, and some chili powder. I found some earth materials such as rocks, mulch, some dirt and sand, some flowers. I'm drawing in a makeup kit that I borrowed from my wife, after asking permission, of course, and a few other things including some ketchup and mustard, some coffee, and a toothbrush. Anything that's safe and that you have permission to use is acceptable as long as you can make marks or color with it. Now that the drawing is complete, I'm going to erase all of my extra pencil lines and prepare to paint. Since I'm using my scavenged materials to color in the drawing, I'm using the crayons to color in the crayons, the markers to color in the markers, and I'll be using mostly watercolor to color in the rest of my traditional materials. So here we go with the non-traditional materials. This part should be fun to experiment with some different types of materials. Right now I'm using a little bit of coffee. You can see it's a little light brownish. I'm starting to paint in the turmeric mixed with a little bit of water. Here's a little chili powder mixed with water. And I tried mixing up some cilantro with some water, but it didn't quite work the way I was expecting, so I kind of smudged it in there. Now you see I'm adding some jam, some mustard and ketchup, straight to the paper with my finger. I've smudged some of my earthen materials, including some sand and dirt and mulch, into my paper, and I'm going to try to glue a little bit of that too so it sticks. Now I'm switching over to the makeup. The makeups have some pretty colors and they're a little sparkly. It looks interesting on some of the different types of paper that I included. This is kind of a new material for me to use, since I've never painted with makeup or used makeup before. Play around with what you found, experiment, and have some fun. Now to finish this up, I'm going to go through and start to label all of those different types of materials that I've mentioned, starting with the non-traditional side and working my way through the traditional side. Now that our drawing is complete, it's time to answer our journal reflection questions. For our ARB students, you're going to be answering these in Google Classroom on a Google form. Please remember to include a copy of a photograph of the work that you created. Let's take a look at these questions. What safe supplies did you find? Try to list as many as you can. Are these supplies adequate? Do they supply you with what you need or not? What other supplies might you be able to find? Think about, if you look around more, what else you might be able to find. And finally, what surprised you about this activity? I'm excited to see what everyone comes up with. Please subscribe to see the latest lessons on Stecher Studios.